The P.
Really bothering Mikey Garcia because he's putting up that left hand, trying to block it, but he can't block it. When he's trying to block it, you know, Garcia-Spence is coming in with that left.
Welcome to the motherfucking replay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Approximately 2 weekends ago, a young up-and-coming super featherweight by the name of Elhem Mekhaled, who hails out of France, squared off against another undefeated fighter like herself, who goes by the name of Daniela Ramos. And this fight between these two fighters in the super featherweight division was for the vacant WBC interim. This title, you know, this baby belt, because that's really what it is, this baby belt put the winner directly in line for a title shot at the WBC champion, the WBC champion being Eva Wallström. And in this contest, Elhem Mekhaled, who hails out of France, emerged the victor. So let's shed a little bit of light on this fighter. Elhem Mekhaled just so happens to have the good fortune of being in a division that has no shortage of talent and has no shortage of interesting potential matchups. That's saying that whether you're looking at the upper crust, the upper echelon, the top tier fighters in that weight class, you got any variety of names to choose from. You have IBF champion Maiva Hamadouche. You have WBA champion Hyun Mi Choi, WBO champion Eva Brodnicka, and WBC champion, who Elhem is actually in line for, Eva Wallström. So you look at the upper echelon, you got a lot of good fighters there to fight. You look at the in-between.
Seasoned vets.
You know, the seasoned vets, the ones that have been around the block. They won a few, they lost a few. You got fighters there like Vivian Obanoff, Baby Nansen, Karina Karuni, Lauren Eagle. These kind of fighters that they've been in situations. They won a few, they lost a few, but they bring something to the table for a young up-and-comer, like Elhem Mekhaled, for example, to have to work around. That those kinds of opponents can provide the experience fights that someone like Elhem might need ahead of a title shot, ahead of a title fight. So you got good champions up there, talented champions. You got good seasoned veterans. And then you look at the up-and-comers that are on the rise. Up-and-comers like highly touted amateur standout, now professional, Michaela Mayer, Alicia Baumgartner, Tiara Brown, Natasha Jonas, who's going to be on the rebound having lost to Vivian Obanoff, one of the seasoned vets that I mentioned. That in and of itself encompasses just how deep the women's super featherweight division is. That even a young, talented, up-and-comer like Natasha Jonas can find herself taking a loss to a seasoned vet like Vivian Obanoff because the talent pool is that deep. There are good young up-and-comers, experienced fighters, and experienced champions. So there are very few easy outs once you start approaching that upper echelon, that if you mean to make any kind of noise, if you're looking to make any kind of rumbles, you're going to have to fight someone good because there are plenty of good people to go around. It's only a matter of time before you find yourself confronted with someone who can really show their shit. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well then, doesn't that mean that the competition is stiff? And if the competition is stiff, how's that a good thing? I'll tell you how it's a good thing. Because there are no shortage of good fights to make. That you don't have to worry about dealing with a scarcity of opponents because you're in a ghost division, where the talent pool is far and few. You understand? A ghost division like, say, super middleweight, for example, where, yes, there are good fighters there, but there aren't that many of them. And if those good fighters are unwilling to walk into a situation with you for one reason or another, you may find yourself inactive due to that scarcity of opponents. Well, that is simply not the case in the women's super featherweight division. Now, Elhem Mekhaled, hailing out of France, and Maiva Hamadouche, IBF champion Maiva Hamadouche, also hailing out of France. That, in and of itself, is an opportunity for a domestic clash between a young up-and-comer and a defending champion. That's an opportunity that's there. That's one scenario. I will say that I don't think that's the likeliest scenario, because Maiva Hamadouche presents unique challenges to a young up-and-comer that's only got 12 professional fights. Understand that Elhem Mekhaled has 12 professional fights, she shows promise, but she really has yet to face someone on the level of a Vivian Obanoff, much less a Maiva Hamadouche. And Maiva Hamadouche is, you know, she's not your run-of-the-mill champion. She is arguably the biggest, if not one of the biggest punchers in the entire weight class. Between the champions, the 4 women holding belts, she has the most devastating punch out of all 4. So that's a unique challenge to anyone that's looking to take that IBF title from her. So while that opportunity is there for Elhem to have a domestic clash, I'm pretty sure that's not the route they're going. They do appear to be going the WBC route, and that would leave them confronted with the WBC champion, Eva Wallstrom. Eva Wallstrom, who's solid, well-rounded, defensible, knows how to alternate between offense and defense, but is not the biggest puncher. In that way, it would be a more favorable situation for someone who's only got 12 professional fights. Someone like Elhem Mekhaled. So I see the rhyme and the reason behind that, and I'm not against it, you understand? I'm not rushing the girl to the top. I think that the way that they've been bringing her along is appropriate, it makes sense, and she's showing promise. She is beginning to show elite level qualities. You take a look at Elhem Mekhaled, and what immediately comes to mind is this is a balanced fighter that knows how to alternate between offense and defense, good snappy punches, good snappy combinations, and has situational awareness. She knows how to slip and hook. It's not just her running in there like a machine gun looking to hit whatever's in front of her. She knows what she's doing, she knows how to defend herself.
And knows how to get within proximity of her opponent while not compromising defense in the process. She stands it at a slight crouch,
Good footwork.
which affords her the opportunity to get under and or around the shots as she comes through the front door, slipping those shots and countering in kind, countering with hooks, countering with straights. There is virtue there. There is promise. She is coming together as a solid world-level fighter. I will say that I think that she might need 1 or 2 more fights, more than likely 1. You know, 1 defense of that interim title that she's got, that status as being the WBC interim champion, I think she should probably have 1 more fight before she goes into a situation with Eva Wallstrom, because Eva Wallstrom's been around the block.
Few times.
So if Elhem Mekhaled wants to stand the best chance of maybe winning that fight, then she should probably have 1 or 2 more defenses of that interim status that she just won. She should probably look into that, because I'm not completely sure that now would be the exact right time for her to contend for a title. But it's not far away, you understand. She is in line. She is in position. So it's an eventuality. It's not a matter of chance more than it's a matter of time. So with those things in mind, fighters like Elhem Mekhaled are what make the super featherweight division, the women's super featherweight division, one of the hottest divisions in boxing with one of the deepest talent pools. Keep your eyes out for this fighter.
In other news, the numbers are back for the Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia pay-per-view, which took place this past weekend, and reports are putting that number at approximately 360,000 pay-per-view buys, with the overall number inching towards approximately 380,000, and an off chance, at least that's how it was described, an off chance that it might hit 400,000 pay-per-view buys. Now that puts the approximate gross revenue that the pay-per-view generated at about $27 million. Now that's not bad for 2 guys in their pay-per-view debut, you understand. That's not bad. But when you think about the number of buys that these pay-per-views have been bringing in overall, you know, 360,000 for this fight, 400,000 for Manny Pacquiao versus Adrian Broner, and 325,000 for Wilder versus Fury. It gives you the impression
They can't sell but so many.
that this definitely isn't your father's pay-per-view market, that this isn't your mother's market, your father's market, because some of these fighters are already established names in the United States. Some of these fighters are well-known. You understand, Manny Pacquiao's a well-known guy, Adrian Broner's a well-known guy, but all they did was 400,000. We look at this pay-per-view, and it did comparable numbers to that pay-per-view, yet this pay-per-view was Errol Spence's pay-per-view debut and Mikey Garcia's. But the ballpark figure for the number of pay-per-views sold is right around what Manny and Broner sold. So what does that communicate? I'll tell you what it communicates. You know, very recently, we've been having a lot of conversations in regards to Joshua versus Wilder, and how what Team Wilder might be thinking is they're going to reject that flat rate offer that was offered to Wilder by DAZN to come over there and fight Joshua there, that he might have turned that down, or they might want him to turn it down because they're thinking that they can make more money off of a pay-per-view, that they can maybe match or exceed, match or surpass the offer from DAZN in the American pay-per-view market. That's one angle of that conversation. But look at these pay-per-view buys.
360,000.
If Anthony Joshua were to have a fight with Deontay Wilder on pay-per-view, he would be in his pay-per-view debut. Now let's cross-compare something here.
Errol and Mikey.
This fight with Mikey and Errol pulled in about $27 million on pay-per-view. $27 million. That $27 million isn't going all to them, you understand. There's a break-even point to cover the costs and cover the fighters' guarantees. Both Mikey and Errol were guaranteed $3 million apiece. $3 million to Mikey, $3 million to Errol. But the vast majority of that initial break-even is going to cover the costs. It's going to cover the costs it took to stage the event in the first place. Anything after that is what people like to call the upside, or, in layman's terms, the profit. That, alright, you broke even, so you got your money back, and now all of this is profit. Now, presumably, the cable and satellite companies and the network are going to get a piece of that action because they're not just staging this thing for no reason. They want to turn over a profit too. So some of that is going to them. And then there's the split. Whatever Mikey and Errol agreed to, whatever split they agreed to, they've got to break that up between each other. But all of that has to happen out of $27 million. All these parties involved are splitting up this $27 million between them. Whereas Anthony Joshua by himself stands to make over $30 million. Not only is that more than these guys are splitting up between each other, that's just for him. That's not counting whatever Jarrell Miller's gonna get, and that's not counting what the event generates overall. That's just what he's getting, and just what he's getting is more than the accumulation of pay-per-views that these guys sold between each other and are gonna break up between each other. So when I see people out there advocating that there's more money in the pay-per-view market, I don't know why you guys believe that. Maybe it's because you're bad at math or you don't understand how this stuff works, but no. It's painfully obvious that there's not more money in the pay-per-view market. You guys are looking at the relative success that two guys might have in their pay-per-view debut and superimposing that, exaggerating it to obscene amounts. Because in order for Wilder, for example, to make the
$80 million.
$40 million per fight, $80 million overall, but $40 million per fight. In order for him to walk away with $40 million, just him and what he would get. In order for him to walk away with that amount of money, him and Joshua's fight would have to do well over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Well over that. In order for Wilder, remember, in order for him, just him, to walk away with $40 million, he nets $40 million. That's not counting what the event generates overall. That's not counting whatever Joshua's going to get. In order for him to walk away to net that amount of money, that same amount of money that he was guaranteed from DAZN, without pay-per-view, by the way, in order for him to net that amount of money, this fucking thing would probably have to do over 1 million pay-per-view buys. Now ask yourself a question. Do you see anybody out there doing anything close to 1 million pay-per-view buys?
No.
Did Pacquiao Broner do anything close to 1 million pay-per-views?
No.
Did Wilder and Fury, did they do anything close to 1 million pay-per-views?
No.
This past fight with Mikey and Errol, did they do anything close to 1 million pay-per-views?
No.
No, they didn't, right? So what makes you think that Wilder versus Joshua is better off on pay-per-view and that they could make more money there when, look, they'd have to sell well over 1 million pay-per-views for him to walk away from with what, $40 million per fight? Yeah, they'd have to sell an obscene number of pay-per-views. And selling obscene numbers of pay-per-views is something that's not happening anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not your mother and father's pay-per-view market, i.e., this is not the Floyd Mayweather era. What worked for him back then may not work for someone else right now, for a myriad of reasons. I mean, one, Floyd was a unique talent, so let's get that right out of the way. He was a unique talent that maintained a successful record fight by fight, so that has a good amount to do with it. But just as well, streaming was not as prevalent then as it is now. There will always and always has been some form of piracy, but generally speaking, it wasn't as widespread and full-blown then as it is now. It's a lot harder to hit 1 million pay-per-view buys now. It's a lot harder to hit 500,000 pay-per-view buys now. So this notion that there's more money on pay-per-view, yeah, that's a pipe dream that the networks, the cable and satellite companies want to sell you so that they can get your money. Because if a streaming app, for example, if a subscription-based streaming app like DAZN stages a fight, well, they ain't gonna see no money out of that. So they don't want those guys taking over. They gotta sell you that dream.
And the fighters.
This is what I've been talking about. Now, this entire conversation is not limited to just, Wilder and Joshua. It's about the pay-per-view market. Don't lose sight of the focal point. Don't lose sight of what this is about. This is about the pay-per-view market. There's another pay-per-view coming up, and I question just what can that pay-per-view, given the combatants, what can a pay-per-view like that do in this market? Lots of question marks. I'm talking about the Terrence Crawford versus Amir Khan pay-per-view coming up in April. I don't know what that fucking fight is gonna do. On one end,
ESPN is a big enough network that they will get the fight exposure ahead of the pay-per-view. That at minimum, people will know that it's about to happen. But at the same time, just because people know it's about to happen doesn't mean they feel like forking over cash. And if the price point is anything like the price points for those pay-per-views we just saw, if the price point is $75, well, I don't know how many people want to pay that to see Terrence Crawford knock out Amir Khan. Because even the people that know Crawford and are fans of Crawford, even the people that know Khan, and maybe some of them are fans of him, at the end of the day, most people agree that that's what's going to happen. Do people want to pay $75 to see that with no spontaneity, no air of intrigue? I mean, if the fight proves to be better than what people think it is, hey, great. But at the end of the day, ahead of the fight, the perception is a certain way. That, maybe Khan makes things interesting for a while. He usually does that. But he's going to end up getting knocked out. That's the perception that people have. So that kind of a perception, how does that affect the buy rate? Especially in a market where it's so fucking hard, it's becoming increasingly hard to crack 500,000 pay-per-view buys. The only bona fide pay-per-view attraction left in America that's actually in his prime and is still fighting, is Canelo Alvarez. And we see what he chose to do. He chose to walk away. What he's going to be getting from DAZN per fight, what he's getting, that is somewhere in the realm of $33 million a fight. That is what he's getting. That is what he is netting. That's not the overall revenue generated. That's just what he's walking away with. And what he's walking away with is more. Just what he's walking away with is more than Mikey and Errol have got to split up between each other, the cable company, and the satellite company. So these are my closing thoughts in regards to the Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence pay-per-view numbers. This event is a moderate success. It definitely looks like they made some money. If the break-even point for this event were anything like the break-even point for Wilder versus Fury, which was about 250,000 buys for them to not lose any money, if the break-even point were anywhere in that realm, then these guys definitely made some money. They definitely turned over a profit. And relatively speaking, for a pay-per-view debut, in regards to Errol, in regards to Mikey, yeah, this is pretty good. It's a pretty good debut. But do realize what I mean when I say that this is a moderate success. It is moderate. Don't blow it out of proportion. Don't convince yourself that there's still Mayweather money to be made out there. There's a reason that a bigger pay-per-view attraction than any of these two guys chose the guaranteed money over the pay-per-view market money. And it's because, well, what he's being guaranteed is more then these two guys have got to split up between each other, the cable and satellite company, and the network with whatever percentage they plan to take. I.e., a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.